Welcome to Corporate Baggage, where we will help you unpack, repack, and lighten the load. We're your hosts, Whitney Siders and Catie Campbell.
For nearly 40 years, we've been coaches, consultants, and leaders inside organizations and supporting global enterprises and Fortune 500 companies to help make those organizations strong and healthy.
If there's a hot topic in the workplace, you better believe we'll be unpacking it here. Topics like return to office, performance reviews, compensation. Nothing is off limits. Like, subscribe, follow us, and drop your baggage in the comments so we can unpack it together and lighten the load.
The only thing that should be in your bag is your paycheck.
Welcome back to our little series that we have going on here. Job descriptions, hiring, onboarding, the right way.
Let's go.
The right way. You know. So we're talking about onboarding today. And there's a lot surrounding onboarding. And I'm sure as many of you know that candidates, new hires are making their decision on whether or not they made the right decision, if they want to stay really within the first 90 days. Often it's sooner than that, but really solidifying their decision in the first 90 days. And those that are having a positive experience in those first 90 days are 10 times more likely to stay, which is significant. And we've talked about the cost that takes on an organization. So how do you make onboarding work in your favor? How do you take it from good, make it better?
So we're going to help you unpack, repack, and hopefully lighten your load around this topic, because at Corporate Baggage, we know how important it is to think about these topics for the employee, for sure. So in this case, the new hire. Mm-hmm. And also we want to hear about it from the leader's perspective, right? And making sure that they've got the tools, resources, and things that they need to make that new hire's experience amazing. So let's dig into onboarding.
Yeah. So I certainly have, and I'm sure many of you listening have experienced this, where you show up to your job on day one. Used to be at an office. Maybe it's at the office. Maybe it's not. But you show up. You have a desk. You have your computer. They say, welcome. Good luck. Have fun. Luckily, that doesn't happen as much anymore because I think it's known that onboarding is important. But when we talk about taking it from, we have onboarding versus onboarding is really working for us, what I'm seeing in terms of just having onboarding is we're going to have you talk to people here. We're going to have you meet some people here. That's good. And what we're going to talk about today is how to take that and make that a little bit better.
I think it's important up front to make the distinction between onboarding and orientation, because
100%.
A lot of times I hear people, in particular HR people, that will conflate the two, and they're completely different things. Orientation is really everything from where is the bathroom? What is the dress code? Like, what am I supposed to be doing?
Setup.
What are my benefits? Mm-hmm. Making sure I've got payroll set properly, et cetera, right? All the forms are filled out. I have my uniform, I have my marching orders, so to speak, and I know what to do. That is orientation.
The basics.
The basics, right. And it can go as far as, what are the company values? What do we really believe in? That sort of thing. Onboarding, as you and I talk about it, and then from here on out, when we're talking about onboarding, what we mean is really the integration of that person into their team, into the organization, so that they are a fully fledged member of the team.
Right. And ideally, that is a fast start, what we like to call it. They're getting a fast start. So how do you do that versus having someone really assimilate in the role? They're really observing, absorbing. We don't want that to take forever. There's a period of which that should take, but then at what point are we expecting them to be contributing in the role? And that's really in that 60 to 90 days where they're starting to figure that out. And then post 90, they should really be contributing. Maybe it's not at 100%, but they're beginning to be a contributing member of the team.
So in your opinion, when does onboarding technically start?
Onboarding, so if you haven't listened to our previous episodes around the candidate experience, go back and listen to those where we talk about what that looks like from the job description to the first call to interviewing to onboarding. So onboarding, in my opinion, starts from the moment that you are made an offer. So that is a part of that candidate experience. And from the moment that you're getting the offer and having those conversations, you accept that offer, onboarding starts. So onboarding is not the day you show up. Onboarding can be, I've accepted the offer and I have a start date that is in 2 weeks from now. What's happening between that time and when you start? So example, I've seen companies where they will send out a welcome package with a little swag, a welcome note. We're so excited that you're coming to be a part of this team. And they're sending some of their swag or notes or sometimes even videos from the team. That's a really positive way to do that. Everyone likes getting stuff in the mail. But that is something that's often missed as a part of that whole experience.
I worked for an organization that, before you started, they would set up your computer, they'd set up your email account.
That's great.
Which, to me, that should be table stakes.
Yeah.
But you're right. There's lots of people that show up on day one and someone goes, well, we got to find you a computer. We got to talk to IT about getting you an email address. It's crazy in this day and age. But this company, they set up your account about 2 weeks before you started. And then everybody on the team, and really it ended up being a lot of people in the organization, would just send you an email that says, welcome, glad to have you here. My name is so-and-so. This is what I do. I will be talking to you in a couple of weeks, but if you need anything before then, here's some things that you can come to me for. So you start off in a company with an inbox that's not at zero, so that's a little intimidating, but it's all of these lovely messages that are individual, heartfelt, and really makes you feel like, oh, people know that I'm coming and they're welcoming me in.
Yeah. Well, and with the email setup, any of those meetings or interactions that are going to be scheduled for you can be put on your calendar. So you show up and the first week, you're not like, oh, what do I do now? Or who am I talking to now? It's on your calendar. So you say, I have a meeting with so-and-so. So taking that from good to better, right? What does that look like? In the description is an agenda, which should always be for any meeting, right? But the meeting is for this purpose. You're meeting with this person, of course, to get to know them, and you're meeting everyone on the team and get to know them around X, Y, and Z. These are the types of things that you should be asking. This is how you might interact with them on an ongoing basis. So that allows you to come with some questions for them as well.
Right. So we know that in the first 2 weeks, one of the most important things is for people to start to feel like they're a part of the team. So meeting people on the team, getting to know their coworkers, and just getting to see, the company values in action a little bit. But in the first 30 to 60 days, getting to meet the broader team or other people that your maybe department interacts with is so crucial and make people's decision-making about whether or not they really want to stay at the company.
Yeah. And that could be one-on-ones. That could be observing team meetings, group meetings, departmental meetings. So doing that is great because you can absorb things. And when I've seen it work really well, there's almost like a concierge person tagged up or a partner with that person that's dedicated to the new hire. So they could say, Catie, you're the new hire. You just observed this team meeting. What questions do you have? What did you notice? What did you observe? What stood out to you? What's still remaining on your mind? So that way they're just not sitting there without any feedback loop. They can really absorb, assimilate it, but also actually even going to the beginning as letting them know what they should be listening for. So they're not just listening to this without any context, the meeting, because that's also a little awkward.
So from what we know, in bringing somebody on board, they absolutely have to have an agenda for the first, in my opinion, it would be 90 days. And it would be everything from who do I need to meet to what is it that I should be doing day to day? Because, when you leave a company, you had a routine. You knew who to email, you knew who to call, you knew what your customer interactions or,
Right.
colleague interactions would look like. So you come from kind of knowing how to do everything to knowing nothing. You legitimately sit down and it's like, where do I start? So for the first 90 days, you've got to have a roadmap for people. So who do I talk to? Who am I supposed to be connecting with? Why? For what purpose? And how do I know that what I'm doing is the right thing to do? So what am I supposed to do after a meeting? Do I send notes in somewhere? Does notes get sent to me? What am I supposed to do next? So it's everything from as basic of, hey, this is when most people come in and when most people leave, to what are you supposed to be doing to start to add value to the organization or to the team from day one?
Yeah, a little lay of the land, rules of the road type of thing, because if you are hiring, you're obviously looking for high performers to bring on. You have the classic, they were the star of the minor league team and now they're in the major leagues or whatever.
Right.
Parallel. It doesn't have to be that way, but they knew what they were doing at their old organization and they were doing it really well. They have the skills and the function, which is why you hired them, but now they're in a completely new environment with completely new people, completely new ways of doing things, and given the opportunity to understand that a little bit better, creates that faster way to onboard so that they can be utilizing their skills quicker versus spending the time and energy trying to figure out the nuances that are happening within the organization.
So what would you say are critical things that need to go into that like 30, 60, 90-day plan? I have a list, but I'd love to hear, what you advise or what you've done as you brought people onto your team too.
Like outside of the basics or in addition to the basics?
I feel like, okay, I would love to say, we don't need to talk about the basics, Whitney, because everybody knows what they are, but they don't. So let's start with the basics and then let's go from there. So we're trying to help everybody go from good,
right,
from better to best or good to better.
And from good to better.
There you go.
But if you don't already have the foundation, that's important too, and we want to help you with that. So
right.
You mentioned a few things like the basics in terms of who do I call if I need computer support. So a lot of times it's, let's generalize this into like a roster of who do I call for what.
Okay.
So I have HR questions. I have payroll questions. I have IT questions. Who do I go to for those basic operating things?
Systems,
right.
software.
So almost, a contact list, if you will.
Okay.
Standard things like, I don't know, we order luncheon on Fridays. It's optional, but we order luncheon on Fridays. The little nuances of the culture that you want to point out to people, I think it's so important, and this is often assumed, which is when people come and go. So again, you have spectrums of environments where it's very strict. You have to be here at certain times. And I think in today's working world, hopefully your organization is a way where we treat people like adults and we expect people to do what they need to do and they can come and go as they please. And we all know that there are standard office hours where people come, right? So it's not open 24/7 usually. So most people are here between 8 and 9, and most people leave between 4 and 6, whatever the hours are for that culture. That just gives people an idea of what's expected so that I don't feel awkward, guilty. I don't have to ask.
All right. So you're talking about the explicit rules. Like if there is a shift and everyone works from 8 to 4:30, then that's a rule, right? But that's an explicit rule. The implicit rules are we order luncheon on Fridays. I worked for an organization that every Monday someone would bring in bagels and cream cheese. So you knew that you didn't have to have breakfast on Monday if you were cool having a bagel.
Yeah.
So
half-day Fridays in the summer.
Right.
Things like
we
that.
celebrate birthdays or we don't celebrate birthdays or whatever the thing may be. So the explicit rules, the implicit rules. Okay.
Right.
What else is on the list?
Of those like basic things.
Right.
I think like there's a lot of organizations now that will have no meeting Fridays or no meeting Mondays, whatever they are. So things like that might not be written in a orientation handbook, although they might be needed to be documented somewhere, but that someone might just tell you, but they might not come up until you're having lunch with someone at day 35.
Right.
So just tell them the things. And why I say they should be documented is because if you're an employee that's been there for a while, or even after 6 months, it's said to be shown, research shows that after 6 months in moving to another role or moving to an organization, you lose those fresh eyes. So I've been in an organization more than 6 months. I'm not thinking about all of the things that were introduced to me or that I learned along the way, maybe the hard way, that I can now just tell somebody. So documenting is what makes that helpful. But those are just some of the examples. I'm sure there's a million others, but that's going to be nuanced to your organization. Communication is a big one too.
That's a huge one. How do we write emails? Is text okay?
Slack, text, call.
Right. How do we how is all of that transferred? How is it saved? So I've worked in places where every meeting was documented and then it was saved in a particular place where you could go back and read meeting minutes or what have you. So every organization has a way that it communicates internally and externally. So how does that happen? When you and I started working together, we had one system that we used for internal communications, and email was how we talked to our clients,
External.
right? Well, you wouldn't know that until somebody says, you just don't send your colleagues an email because you don't need to, because we have this other system over
Right.
here and that's what it's for. But once someone tells you that, good.
Yeah, you're good. How to communicate. It's the systems. How to communicate. How do we celebrate? So someone gets a big deal, or someone does a good job, or it's their birthday. Do we celebrate birthdays? Like, how do we do that here? What does that look like?
Right. Yeah. Milestones, promotions, all of that kind of stuff. I've worked in places that actually do parties when people come on board, and they do it when people leave as well, which was a wonderful thing. We can talk about that at some point, about exiting companies.
Maybe that's our last episode.
Maybe
for
that's
this
another one of
series,
like
offboarding.
That's offboarding. That should be one for sure. But what do we do when somebody comes onto the
A
team?
welcome lunch. You could always do optional welcome lunch, something like that.
Okay. So one of the basics then is the rules of the road for
Yes.
how do we work and how work gets done.
Yep. And then so past that, you either have that documented or it's reviewed with whoever that new hire is. I strongly recommend pairing them up with somebody, whether it is someone they work with or not, preferably not, because then they get to meet someone outside of their day-to-day. And it almost feels like a little bit of a confidant that you could say, hey, what do I do with X, Y, and Z? Or I thought I knew what his or her role is, but I can't, like, what do they actually do here? You might not want to ask those questions to your boss or the people that report to you, as you probably shouldn't.
Right.
But who do you ask that question to? And it's typically not HR.
Well, it's like my mom would say, it's like you're asking the dumb questions that are not dumb questions.
Right.
They are necessary to understand the context that you're working and living in. So it makes a lot of sense. And I've seen that be very effective, you're right, in having a buddy or a buddy kind of system, mentor, you call it all sorts of things. But having them outside of the chain of command that you're in, off of your team, that sort of thing can be so helpful in being able to feel comfortable to ask those questions. And then it extends the responsibility of integrating this new employee far beyond your team. So it makes it more of a collective shared experience as opposed to it's the hiring manager, it's responsibility to do that.
So if you're listening to this and thinking, well, that's more work for that person, high performers get more work. Right? You might be thinking that, right? You might be thinking, I've done that and it took more time. Yes. And you're part of a team. Unless you're an hourly worker and you're getting paid more for hourly time, you're a salary employee, right? You're a part of a team. And the benefit of that person getting up to speed quicker is a benefit for all when it's done well.
Well, and I think about even some of the companies I work with that are in construction and they have hourly employees. One of their biggest focuses, of course, is safety, right?
Yeah.
So it makes
That's
sense
huge.
for everybody to be involved in the onboarding of somebody because it helps to keep everybody safe. Everyone, right? One person who just doesn't know because they're the new person
puts everyone at risk.
Puts everyone at risk. So it behooves all of us to make a collective effort to bring them on board.
Yeah. So going back to your question around like the 30, 60, 90. So from my perspective, you're really chunking that out. So if you're clear on, okay, over the 30, 60, 90-day marks, we're getting you to the point where we're ramping you up, where here are the things that we want you to feel, think, and do. I always go back to that for a lot of things, is here are the results that we want you to be able to see and feel and contribute at the 90-day mark. So how do we back into that and get there? So the first 30 days is really about observing, sitting in meetings, meeting people, just getting a feel of what's going on. You also are understanding those daily tasks that are going to contribute to those outcomes that you will ultimately be after, so that you're getting a little bit of practice in the systems. Although there are systems that you probably used before, like Outlook or Word or those basic ones, there might be other technologies that you're using that you just need to get a little bit up to speed on.
Right.
So you're kind of getting your feet wet, right, the first 30 days with no expectations of fully contributing. And for the employer, I think this is a great point in time to leverage a new employee's fresh thinking. So like I said, they have fresh eyes for only a certain amount of time. So what I've seen really strong organizations do well in onboarding is ask for direct feedback around certain things during those first 30, 60 days.
Okay.
Typically that's between 30 and 60 more so, because again, 30, you're really just getting your feet wet. But asking things like, this is how we do things in terms of this project. Example, you're going to observe this team meeting. I would love your thoughts on this particular topic when we're done. So that one, they're going into the meeting with a purpose. And two, you're getting their ideas
Right away
on something.
Yeah.
And it's probably something that you haven't thought about because they're looking at it from a completely different angle.
You said something, I think, really important a second ago that I want to highlight, which is you said fully contributing until they're fully contributing. If a 30, 60, 90-day plan is really well written, whatever you're asking them to do in that plan for the first 30 days, if it's just, I want you to observe, I want you to take notes, I want you to give feedback on specific things, I want you to meet these particular people, that is fully contributing. So if they bring you on to be a team leader, and that usually means that you're pretty autonomous and you're setting direction and strategy and you're tasking things out. You can't do that in the first 30 days because you don't know what's going on unless you are literally picking up from working in one store to a sister store and it's the exact same job. But that's usually not what we're talking about. So fully contributing is hitting all of the things that are in that in that 30-day plan, not the full expectations of what
role.
Of the role, right?
Good distinction.
But that I think is super important because you started this conversation talking about high performers, and they go from knowing everything and being a superstar to like knowing nothing, and now they're in, and everybody tries to show up and prove their worth, and they want to add value and do all this kind of stuff. If you don't tell them, here's what adding value looks like, and fully contributing looks like in 30, 60, and 90 days, which will increase, right?
Yeah.
Then they're going to come in and they'll be winging it or trying or feeling like, I don't know if this is good or I don't know what good looks like. But if you can tell them what it looks like, that's fully contributing for the first 30 days. And then in the first 60 days, it looks something like progressively, more significant. And by 90 days, maybe by the end of 90 days, they should be a fully functioning, whatever you hired them in that role.
Right.
Because they've had a quarter of the business year, they should be able to, they should know, but you're also spelling it out for them.
Yeah, 100%. That's a great distinction because the worst thing that you could do is have someone feel like they're failing against an expectation that just isn't there.
Right.
So having those expectations not only guides them, but it helps them feel that they're contributing value right away.
Yeah.
Because you say, here's what I want you to do. And they're like, I'm doing it. Like, I feel good about this.
Yeah.
And you're tapping into the value they're providing. So you're increasing that as you go along. The first 30 is observation, simulation. From 60 to 90, you're really starting to get them into their role, depending on what that is. But they're doing things day to day that they're starting to track, to monitor, to really get into the daily activities of what their fully functioning role would be. But it's more of the practice towards proficiency, whereas at 90 days, they should be doing those things without as much guidance. So depending on the role, that there might still need to be guidance, but they're able to do that without a structured like a paint by numbers, if you will.
Yep. So it sounds like, the plan is really designed to give people what the expectations are. The one piece that you haven't mentioned, but I know that you would if I didn't jump in, is around feedback. So feedback for the new hire on, hey, we've asked you to do X, Y, and Z. Here's how it's going. And also just feedback on other things that we've noticed they've done really well, or things that, gosh, we didn't even know this about you in your interview, and we're so excited that this is a part of who you are or how you work. And then feedback from the new hire to the business, to their manager or whomever, on what their experience has been, where they feel really comfortable, what still confuses them, where they might need some more support, where they feel like they could have a bit more autonomy because they're feeling, competent or accomplished in a specific area. So that establishing what feedback looks like and that cycle in the first 30 days is going to be critical.
Yeah, that goes back to the systems and the rhythms of the organization. So for team meetings and one-on-ones, what does that look like culturally? So those should already be intact when they first start. Is when do you meet with your manager one-on-one? Is that weekly? Is it bi-weekly, half hour, hour? What does that look like? Set that on your calendar and have that standard. In addition to that, when you're onboarding, in that onboarding 90-day phase, I'd suggest maybe a milestone check-in that maybe is a little bit longer. Maybe it could be tagged on to the already standing one-on-one that at day 30, you're saying, how are things? It doesn't mean you can't talk about it at other points, but you're specifically saying, you've been here for 30 days now. Here are the milestones that we wanted to hit with you. Here's how you're doing against them. Like you said, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. And then at 90, you're saying, okay, here's what happens from now. We'll continue to meet every other week. You'll have your performance check-in quarterly, like whatever that standard for the organization is, so that, again, one, they know how they're doing, but also they know what to expect moving forward.
So,
and what that feedback loop is, like you said.
Ideally, the 30, 60, 90-day plan, which, gosh, I wish more companies would make table stakes when they're onboarding new people. They don't. Because I've had conversations in the last couple of years with companies, and I thought, it's one of those, so what's their 30, 60, 90-day plan going to be? And I get deer in headlights look. What do you think should be in the plan? I'm like, okay, we need to go back to school.
We're starting from scratch.
We're starting from scratch, but that's okay. So, if you are a business leader and you're hearing this and you don't have a 30, 60, 90-day plan, it's fine.
It's okay. Yeah.
But you need one because it's expensive to hire new people. You want, again, part of your employer brand, which we've talked about in previous episodes, is going to be how we treat people. And that is from the time you extend the offer, as Whitney said, to the time that they really feel they're on the team and they feel totally integrated. That onboarding is crucial. So if you don't have a plan, you're just going to put this on your leadership to-do list this year to make sure you get this in your plan. So ideally, this is something that is replicated across multiple roles. So you come in as a brand new hire right out of high school or college or trade school, great. That same new hire plan is the same for somebody who's the new executive vice president of something. What's in the plan specifically obviously would be different, but the idea that there would be something around how we communicate, how we operate, who are the go-to people, an org chart. That's one thing we didn't talk about is an org chart. Who's who in the zoo? Who do I go? It's not even just like the go-to for fixing a problem, but like, what is
just generally what's the structure?
Do we have a chief accounting officer or a director of accounting? Those are two different roles. Who does what? So having that org chart can be super helpful for people just to orient themselves to where everybody else is in relation to the organization. Yeah. So ideally, this is an exercise that you design out once, you put together materials once, and then as you bring in new people, you update it.
Right.
So Whitney's a manager. Great. We have this is her 30, 60, 90-day plan, but a lot of it is the same as the person who's coming in as the new.
It's from the template.
Right.
Yeah,
it's from the template.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that's the business. So how should a new hire be thinking about their onboarding? Because conceivably, there are companies out there who don't do these 30, 60, 90-day plans. So, what kinds of things do you recommend to some of your coaching clients as they come on board to a new company to really be successful in the first 90 days? Or I'm thinking about, too, I've had a couple of people that I've been coaching this last year who have been promoted into new roles. And that is almost the same as coming into a new organization because you're coming into a brand new set of expectations.
That was one thing I was actually going to bring up from the organizational side before we can connect those two, which is a huge thing that's missed. Even if organizations have a really strong onboarding for new hires, what is often missed, 99% of the time missed, is internal onboarding. So I helped create this package. It was an internal onboarding package for a pretty large organization that was moving managers or directors into VP level roles. So you would think we're working with senior leaders, like they've been here 20 years. They know how things go, or they've been here 10 years. They know how things are done here. Yeah, they might know how things are done here. So those basics we talked about, you don't need to cover. And if they're moving departments, there are some things that you still would need to talk about.
For sure.
And the expectations of the role are different, as they should be. They're in a new role. So what does that look like? And what does success look like in the first 30 days, 60 days, 90 days? So then you're not setting them up for success, because what happens too is a lot of times, I'm talking about senior leaders, but a bigger issue is when you have really high-performing individual contributors that move from an individual contributor role, and they're amazing and they're crushing it, and now they're a leader of a team. Congratulations, you've never been trained as a manager. You're really good at selling cars. Now you're going to train people to sell cars, and you're going to lead a team, and you're going to keep selling cars. Good luck.
Right. Well, okay, so you hit a couple of things in there. And I think
more things to unpack.
As usual.
More unpacking.
All right, here's some more unpacking. So one is when you were talking about, you would think that somebody internal to an organization, they promote to the next level, like they know how things work. But let's say you're promoting from a director to a vice president level.
Right.
So you know how a vice president works or what their role
and I've
is
seen this before.
From the perspective of being a director, but not from the perspective of what the business expects of a vice president.
Right.
So you're modeling your behavior and your actions and your sort of expectations of what a vice president means based on what you've seen versus what the organization actually expects. So if there isn't proper onboarding in that promotion cycle, you are putting the business at risk, and then you're putting yourself professionally at risk too, because somewhere along the line somebody said, hey, Whitney, we're gonna put her in the vice president seat, she's gonna be great. And now you're in there floundering around thinking you're doing what you've seen all these other vice presidents do, and that's not what they need from you at all. So that can cause some friction. The other thing you talked about, which I think is one of the hardest leaps in an organization, when you get promoted from individual contributor to a manager, and oftentimes those people are, as you said, are not given training or development opportunities to learn how to manage and lead people. But the second piece is they're typically asked to now manage or supervise the people who were their peers.
Right.
And a lot of times when there's that role that's open, there's more than one person who thought they were going to get that manager role. And now there's some people who are upset because they didn't get that. And now it's like, oh, this person was my cellmate, my flunky cube mate a couple weeks ago, and now they're my boss. And it causes a lot of friction. It's one of the hardest leaps in any organization. Yeah.
So on that particular piece, it goes back to role clarity and understanding what a good manager leader, I know is used we know the difference and it's a little interchangeable in this conversation, but in that particular level of role, understanding at this organization, what are my expectations? What does good look like in this role, so that I can not just understand what that looks like, but how am I going to get there? So over those, like, maybe it's 30, 60, 90, but in that instance, it might be a longer runway in terms of getting up to speed, because it might involve training. It might involve, I often recommend like a listening tour type of thing, because it might be your peers, it might not, but you're working with various parts of the organization, most likely at a different level. So back to the director to VP level, when you're thinking about at that more strategic level, whether you're coming from internal or external, but definitely external, that first 30, you're doing a listening tour. You're going around. Yes, you might be paired up with people, but you ask the question, what happens if you're not? If you don't have a clear onboarding, I always go back to, of course, you have the right to ask the questions. You can get curious, not to say, where's my onboarding, but to say, so what are your expectations over the next few months for me? What should I be doing in terms of what should I be contributing? What should be the outcomes that I'm after? How am I going to know that I'm on the right track? What would you be looking for to tell you that I'm on the right track?
Right.
And then start talking to people and go around and ask those questions. Get to know people. Think of yourself almost as an outside party trying to get a pulse on the organization.
So I think what you're saying is really smart here. And
thank you.
Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. But honestly, though, if you come into an organization as a new hire or promote into a role and you don't have somebody saying, oh, here's a 30, 60, 90-day plan, my number one piece of advice is to make your own. So just you're already going down that path, right? But if no one's saying here's what you should do or here's where you should go or who to meet with, you know, come up with the template of here's what it should look like. This is what I want my first 30 days to look like, my first 60, my first 90.
And pressure test that.
That's right. Because even if you're promoting within an organization, that same amount of time that a new hire would have to say, do I want to stay here? Is this the right place for me? It's going to happen in the first 90 days. Absolutely. Those thoughts are going to form within the first couple of weeks, but it builds. By the time you get to 90 days, you know pretty much whether or not you would want to stay in or out. And that's the role for you. And by 6 months, this is a complete in or out. By 6 months, if you're not fully integrated into that role, into that position, you're going to be looking for another job.
If it's not a hell yeah, it's a no, probably.
That's right. And so let's make sure that you as an individual, as a new hire or a new promotee, you are setting yourself up for success. If you are gung-ho, excited about being in this new role, this new organization, great. But if they're not going to give you that or they're just not sophisticated enough, and look, there are a lot of small and medium-sized businesses that just do not have
the bandwidth.
They don't have the bandwidth.
To do that.
They don't have, they've never learned to do that. They don't have an internal HR kind of capacity, or they don't necessarily work with people like us, or not yet. And so, you know, it's conceivable that lots of people listening are like, yeah, but I work in a company that only has 15 people. It doesn't mean that you should just ignore any of this. In fact, this would be a great thing to be able to start doing and make it a thing. So if you come in and you say, I'm making a 30, 60, 90-day plan, and you work it through with your manager to say, what should I have accomplished in the first 30, 60, 90 days, and who should I meet? Get feedback and start. You could start something that would be of huge value to your organization, especially when they see that you are integrating, that you're getting to know people, that you're getting to know the business. It's great. So don't worry if you start a new job and you're listening, you're like, yeah, but they didn't give me anything. Just make your own. Take it upon yourself to say, okay, if I want to give this business a shot, I'm going to make my own plan.
It's going to set you up for success
100%.
in the long run. And if you're an organization thinking, I don't have the bandwidth, maybe I'm a small to mid-sized business, I don't have the bandwidth, I don't have an HR team, or I just don't have the bandwidth, it's not a big lift. We can help. Call us. There's template. We're gonna pop actually some templates into these episodes notes to like get you started, because it's not a huge lift to get started. You will have to fill in some nuanced things for your organization, and say you don't even want to go that route. Right out from as the organization say, here's a 30, 60, 90 day. Let's co-create it.
That's right.
Let's do it together. So we're saying as the new hire, you could certainly do that. As the organization, you could certainly do that. Plan C is you say, listen, we know that this is going to be helpful for both of us, and we want to do it together. So again, depending on the organization, the role, one of those three options should work for you. Either way, you're setting each other up for the best experience and hopefully an accelerated onboarding.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I've worked with some leaders who I've suggested this 30, 60, 90-day plan. And you would have thought, I'm saying, go to the moon and back. And then,
oh, yeah, 100%.
Or I'll get, oh, well, I never had that when I started it. And my answer is always, but wouldn't it have been better if you did? And they go, yeah, I would have had to learn this the hard way and that the hard way. And this would have been more clear to me. And I wouldn't have stepped over or on toes over here. I would have understood what I was supposed to do to be successful. And so you're right. It's not a huge lift, but I want to empower people who, you and I know there's a ton of people right now who are, trying to find their next role. They're really they've been laid off or out of work for a while, and that's challenging. And so they all have this energy of wanting to come in and contribute, but often don't know where to do that. And so getting it on paper, getting some feedback and input from the people that are hiring you can really help, I think, also calm some of those new hire jitters, because that's true of anybody.
I think so.
It's like starting a new school or making the jump from middle school to high school. It's the same thing. So, this is a way to be able to kind of ground yourself in what it is that you're going to do, how you want to show up, and then certainly starting to carve out what that pathway to success is going to look like.
Certainly. And I think listeners might be thinking, okay, what happens after the 90 days? And that goes back to, I alluded to this a little bit, which is then they are back in what should be your organization's rhythm or cycle for performance. So the regular one-on-ones, the quarterly or twice a year at least performance conversations, please don't make it annual. That's another conversation for another day.
Yeah.
But it should be what is that normal cycle? So making sure that they know what that is, those things are set up for them, and they know how they're doing. And at any point, what is the feedback loop that is out of that cycle? Because things will come up outside of that. So what do they do when that happens?
That's right.
Yeah.
I love it. Well packed. Well played.
Yeah, we unpacked that one pretty fast. So the onboarding, if you don't have it, get it. No, just kidding. If you don't have it, you have a couple options. Help structure that out for your organization. If you're a new hire, you could do it yourself, or you can always co-create it together. And we'll talk about some offboarding too. I'm really excited for that next episode.
Okay, we'll talk about me firing you from our podcast.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Thanks for listening today. If you have some corporate baggage you want to unpack or something you're taking away from the conversation, drop it in the comments.
Please find our social links in the description, and we'd love it if you could comment, subscribe, and share this with someone that you think it could help too.